He wakes before sunrise, surrounded by a shrine of motionless progress, notebooks stacked like untested swords, screens glowing with color-coded calendars, habit trackers, Notion dashboards, systems within systems. He tells himself is organizing his attack, perfecting his plan, mastering discipline. But beneath that smooth digital armor lies fatigue, confusion, and a quiet shame. Every new system promises renewal, but the reward fades faster each time. He is a warrior lost in preparation, mistaking order for movement, mistaking business for direction. The truth no one tells him is that planning feels like productivity only because it gives the illusion of safety. It lets him believe he's in control, that every possibility has a shield, every risk a map. Yet while he plots the future, the present gathers dust beneath his feet. Each idea sharpened in theory grows dull in the sheath of hesitation. The sword that never cuts begins to rust. This is a trap of eternal preparation, the devotion to readiness that becomes the enemy of readiness itself. Modern men confuse motion with momentum, strategy with battle, control with courage. But real progress has no drafts, no prototypes. It is forged in the immediacy of doing. Without the privilege of knowing how it will unfold, planning offers a comfortable illusion. It feels rational, sophisticated, even moral. It gives the sense that you're responsible, grounded, mature. Society celebrates planners, those who have 10-year visions and flawless routines. But under that celebration hides a deeper failure, the avoidance of uncertainty. Planning, when corrupted by fear, becomes self-preservation disguised as wisdom. It's an armor made from intellect, shielding the heart from exposure. The more he plans, the less he feels alive, because life itself is not a diagram but a collision, messy, unpredictable, raw. The future doesn't belong to those who prepare endlessly. It belongs to those who strike with clarity when the window opens for only a moment. The samurai knew this truth like they knew the way to their blades. To hesitate was to die. In battle, thinking twice could mean thinking never again. A swordsman could spend a lifetime training his body, but the real training was mastery of timing. Knowing when thought must vanish and instinct must reign, action exists only in the present moment. Thought belongs to the past and future, where fear breeds. So, when a Menno verplans, he is really bartering with the unknown, trying to control the river instead of learning to flow with it. He tells himself as being strategic, but is negotiating with fear for more time. And fear never stops bargaining. It whispers, just a little more research, one more outline, then you'll be ready. But readiness is a mirage. There's no arrival, only a continual entering. The samurai called it cutting with no mind, acting without the clumsy interruption of doubt. Modern men call it flow, but they rarely taste it because they are busy architecting the scaffolding for a perfect start that never comes. From the outside, it looks responsible, even admirable, the man meticulously preparing for battle. But by the time his plan feels complete, the battlefield has already changed. Life moves faster than the strategist's pen. Progress is perishable. The world rewards speed married to clarity, not perfection paralyzed by fear. Yet the planner clings to detail, reorganizing his list instead of stepping into the fray. He mistakes sophistication for strength. He forgets that the warrior's way is not clean and linear. It's jagged, sudden, alive. The samurai did not rehearse the exact angle of every strike before combat. They embodied discipline so deeply that the strike arose naturally. But the modern man idolizes systems more than simplicity. He believes the right method will make him fearless. So, he builds libraries of templates, bookshelves of theory, rituals of calibration. His life becomes a museum dedicated to potential. He is always about to start the business, about to hit the gym consistently, about to launch. The air around him hums with future tense, but presence withers in all that anticipation. When he finally acts, the action feels foreign, awkward, stripped of rhythm. He has forgotten the texture of effort, the weight of true decision. Every plan, no matter how strong, eventually becomes a kind of prayer to control uncertainty. But control isn't power. Presence is power. The greatest warriors amongst understood this paradox. Preparation mattered, but only as a means to act without hesitation when the time came. To plan and never leap is to worship the map instead of walking the path. Every moment spent perfecting the plan is energy stolen from emotion that perfects the man. The blade meant to protect him now imprisons him. The great paradox, We plan to act, but sometimes planning becomes the act. To understand this, we must explore the mind of those who mastered stillness and decision as one, Zen monks and samurai warriors at dawn. The temple is silent except for the soft whisper of a broom brushing stone. A monk moves slowly along the courtyard, each sweep deliberate yet effortless. There is no hurry, no goal, no expectation of completion. He is not trying to finish sweeping. He is simply sweeping. In that motionless rhythm, there is freedom, motion existing within stillness. This image holds the essence of Zen, Wu Wei, the art of non-doing. Misunderstood by the hurried mind, non-doing isn't laziness. It's total immersion in the task so pure that the self dissolves and what remains is action untainted by hesitation or self-noise. The monk does not plan each stroke, yet every stroke lands perfectly. There is no checklist, no optimization, no attempt to control the result. His presence is his discipline. For the modern man, this logic feels foreign. He is trained to equate movement with speed, productivity with complexity. His world worships metrics, deadlines, reports, actions dissected, measured, optimized. But this constant motion is frantic stillness, not vitality. He moves but never arrives. His energy circles around anxiety disguised as achievement. The corporate world's version of discipline is built on effort and outcome. Zen's version is built on alignment. The difference is subtle but transformative. When the ego drives the act, effort becomes struggle. When the act arises from stillness, effort becomes grace. Real stillness doesn't slow you down. It clears the clutter so that motion can flow without friction. Every great swordsman, craftsman, athlete, or leader touches the state at their peak. The moment where thought vanishes and the work performs itself through the body. In Zen, Mushin means no mind. It's not the absence of thought, but the absence of friction between thought and execution. It is living without the constant self-analysis that chokes spontaneity. The planner's addiction to control is the opposite state. It's thought multiplied, rehearsed, commented upon, feared. He drafts strategy after strategy not because it's strategic, but because it's afraid. Planning becomes a way to stay comfortable in mental motion instead of physical commitment. It's the ego's attempt to avoid exposure. If I can imagine every outcome, I'll never fail. But Zen teaches that this very attachment is failure. It cuts the warrior off from the flow that would carry him forward. The mind that tries to predict loses the ability to perceive. When Musasha wrote that strategy must be born from experience, not anticipation, he echoed the same truth. Wisdom cannot be constructed in theory. It must be lived in contact with resistance. One strike performed in full presence teaches more than 1,000 imagined battles. The Zen mind therefore trains not to think less, but to need thought less, to trust the intelligence of direct experience. Presence becomes its own form of knowledge. If planning is the ego's fortress, stillness is its dissolution. But stillness, if misunderstood, can become another avoidance. Many men confuse meditation for escape, calm for apathy, reflection for retreat. They sit in silence, yet their stillness is heavy with fear of motion. This is false stillness, the kind that freezes instead of frees. True stillness is alive. It breathes action. The monk sweeping is not avoiding life. He is fully inside it. His serenity produces motion, not paralysis. It's the same state a warrior enters before a duel, utter calm, yet ready to strike without delay. In that state, movement and stillness become the same pulse. To touch. That pulse requires trust in timing, in instinct, in the body's wisdom. The modern man has overtrusted intellect and undertrained instinct. His decisions pass through too many filters of opinion and approval before they ever reach motion. Zen discipline erases those filters. It doesn't ask you to abandon thought. It asks you to remember that thinking is a servant, not a master. Begin small. Take one task today and give yourself no more than 10 seconds to begin it once it enters your awareness. 10 seconds, then movement. No debate, no inner monologue, no forecast. This is a modern embodiment of Wu Wei, letting life move through you rather than over-planning how to move through life. When you act this way, something subtle shifts. Fear loses its vocabulary. The action becomes self-validating. The noise quiets. Still but in motion, Zen dissolves the planner's illusion, but the warrior transforms it. For the samurai, planning is not escape. It's sharpening before battle. then cutting fully when the time comes. The warrior's life was not measured in years, but in moments of clarity, of decision, of clean execution. The samurai called their path Bushido, the way of the warrior, and at its heart was an unbreakable harmony between inner stillness and outward precision. They did not worship planning, they worshiped readiness. Every scroll, every kata, every morning ritual existed for a single purpose, to remove hesitation when the crucial second arrived. Bushido was disciplined not as rigidity, but as purity, integrity so deep that thought and action became one fluid gesture. Honesty, courage, and honor were not abstract virtues. They were internal weapons forged to defeat self-deception. The warrior was honest enough to see fear, courageous enough to move despite it, and honorable enough to stand by his decision after the blade had fallen. In this ancient code lies a forgotten meaning of execution. The samurai never sought infinite preparation. Their lives were too fragile for such luxury. Planning was important, but only until it began to dilute instinct. They understood something modern men forget. A plan should end where the opportunity begins. To cross that invisible line requires what can be called a decision threshold, the moment where preparation must end and courage must ignite. The threshold is not fixed, it is felt. Too soon, and recklessness destroys you. Too late, and hesitation does. Mastery lies in sensing the perfect moment, and acting with total commitment once it arrives. Musashi taught his students to observe timing as they would observe breath, always present, always shifting. The warrior who hesitated to strike lost not to the opponent's skill, but to his own delay. Modern productivity culture glorifies endless preparation as virtue. Men spend months perfecting systems, optimizing tools, organizing tasks, rarely asking if their motion leads anywhere real. The samurai would see this as indulgence, a life lived in rehearsal. Bushido instead followed a fluent rhythm, plan with clarity, act with confidence, gather feedback, recalibrate, then return to clarity again. Each cycle reinforced motion instead of imprisoning it. The modern man, however, loops endlessly in the first phase, mistaking clear lists for clear minds. The loop becomes a form of spiritual anesthesia, numbing him to the anxiety of imperfection. Yet every system, no matter how elegant, is nothing without the act that tests it. A blade admired on the rack never earns its edge. Strategic foresight was never the enemy. The samurai planned before battle, studied terrain, read the enemy's rhythm, but they never imported that mental chessboard into the moment of engagement. Once the fight began, foresight transformed into instinct. Fantasy turned to focus. This is where many men collapse. They stay in mental fantasy long after life demands embodiment. Comfortable fantasizing feels safe. Their mistakes can be erased, rewritten, perfected. But real motion carries weight, consequence, exposure. Bushido trained men to bear that exposure without retreat. To move imperfectly but entirely, that was courage. To move half-heartedly with constant analysis, that was cowardice disguised as intellect. Bushido's discipline was not grim or joyless. It was sacred simplicity. There were no unnecessary movements, no ornamental plans. Every gesture had meaning because it was born from awareness. Imagine writing a sentence knowing it could be your last. Each stroke of the brush would hold soul and precision. That's how the samurai approached action. They believed life itself was a brush, and action was the ink. Each moment demanded sincerity. The modern man, pulled between distraction and self-doubt, fragments his energy through deliberation. He wonders, second-guesses, repositions, reviews. But in execution, half-presence is failure. The warrior's lesson is brutal but freeing. Clarity is found through motion, not before it. Bushido reframed masculinity as living entirely committed to what one chooses. Not perfect, but full. The man who moves, even clumsily, forges strength. The man who waits for certainty dissolves in options. Discipline is not the art of never missing, but the courage to continue swinging despite the miss. Each decision leaves a scar that teaches timing, humility, and rhythm, the only way a swordsman learns a dance of life. Modern men could trade a decade of planning for 1 month of sincere motion and discover more truth than any self-help cycle could promise. True execution is not aggression but alignment. It is a merging of mind, body, and will with the reality confronting them. The world shifts only when your decisiveness does. And like the warriors of old, every man must define his threshold, the point at which more preparation is no longer wisdom, It's fear pretending to be disciplined. But the reason we stay trapped in the planning stage isn't lack of skill, it's an emotional addiction. The planner's mind feeds on safety like a monk feeds on simplicity. Next, we expose why planning feels so seductive. Your brain loves to plan. It's built to simulate, predict, rehearse, to sketch out possible futures in vivid detail before reality even arrives. When you imagine taking action, the same circuits light up as if you were actually moving. Dopamine releases, the body rewards you, and for a brief moment you feel accomplished. You haven't lifted a finger, yet somewhere inside you experience the hum of achievement. This is the hidden pleasure of preparation, the quiet narcotic we mistake for progress. Neuroscientists call it anticipatory reward, but it's more primal than that. It's the brain's way of tricking you into believing safety is success. The body celebrates a rehearsal because, for ancient humans, rehearsing danger meant surviving it. The trouble is, in a world without real predators, that loop never stops. We plan not to survive, but to delay living. This is a simulation trap. You run scenarios in your mind, adjusting, refining, fantasizing, all to protect yourself from the discomfort of uncertainty. It feels intelligent, strategic, even mature. But your mind is simply building a theater in which you always win because the play never reaches the stage. The moment you act, the feedback had wound your pride. So you stay in rehearsal. Journaling becomes endless reflection without resolution. System building becomes a substitute for building the self. The ritual of structure replaces the risk of embodiment. And each cycle tightens the same cognitive knot, the ego's need for control. Within its grip, every to-do list, every digital workspace, every perfect morning routine becomes a mirror where the ego admires its own anticipation. Men mistake these rituals for self-discipline, but true discipline begins only when prediction ends. Our ancestors didn't have this luxury. Their brains evolved under threat, not comfort. They didn't plan for 6 months to hunt. They followed hunger into motion. Action wasn't a choice. It was a price of life. Their dopamine came from execution, not simulation. But modern civilization has inverted the equation. We're rewarded for the appearance of control. We get status for planning, likes for declaring intentions, validation for architectural perfection. The masculine instinct to act has been suffocated beneath the bureaucracy of self-optimization. Men drift, a phenomenon that could be called masculine drift, where potency erodes into potential. They begin to prefer the potential of what they could do to the potency of what they actually do. Potential is always clean, uncriticized, infinite. Potency is messy, judged, limited, but real. The modern man, starved of real feedback, feeds instead on imagined execution, mistaking simulated fire for warmth. Philosophy and neuroscience agree on one point. Control is addictive. Control ignites the brain pleasure systems just like victory does. Each spreadsheet or new plan gives a surge of mastery. But it's a hollow mastery. You control data, not destiny. It's a fire of control, bright, safe, contained within four walls, offering comfort while it slowly burns the oxygen of youth. The alternative fire, the fire of presence, is wild and uncertain. It's a flame you enter when you decide without knowing, when you risk humiliation, when the body, breath, and present moment merge. The fire of control feeds comfort. The fire of presence demands courage. Both burn, but only one refines at in psychological terms. Planning releases chemical satisfaction with no cost, while action demands emotional taxation. It's not a rational failure. It's a neurobiological one. Your biology rewards the illusion. That's why it's so hard to stop planning. You're chasing the same feedback loop as any addict. Stimulus, reward, safety. The ego calls it preparation. Biology calls it survival. But spiritually, it is stagnation. Men who live entirely in simulated progress lose their ability to confront real friction. The soul atrophies in comfort. The world becomes theoretical, and theory quietly kills vitality. This doesn't mean reject planning entirely. It means recognize its dual nature. Planning is a tool, not a shelter. The difference lies in how you approach the fires burning within you. When you live only by the fire control, you live warm but weak. When you live through the fire presence, you get burned but transformed. Every deliberate step into risk re-educates the nervous system to find safety in uncertainty. That restoration of courage, neural and spiritual, is a lost art of modern masculinity. You can sense this truth in small ways. The first rep in the gym you didn't feel like doing. The difficult conversation you finally started. The project sent before you declared it ready. Those moments taste different. No dopamine rush before, but peace after. That is real dopamine, earned through embodiment. Planning should exist only to build such moments, not to postpone them. The challenge, then, is to notice when your mind begins to feed on control again. What's the satisfaction of drafting another list, building another routine, and recognize it as self-medication? Planning must end where courage begins. Now that you've seen the traps in the mechanics, the question becomes, can we use planning without letting it use us? The answer lies in the quiet precision of Kaizen, incremental mastery without hesitation. The wisest systems of the East never promise sudden transformation. They promise refinement, endless, steady, deliberate. Kaizen, born in Japan's post-war reconstruction but rooted in far older philosophy, was never about perfection. It was about presence through repetition, progress sculpted one breath, one movement, one correction at a time. The samurai understood this centuries before corporations learned to name it. They practiced not to improve occasionally, but to be practice itself. Their days were built of silent drills until the body no longer asked for permission from thought. In that state, discipline ceased to feel like effort. It became identity. There were no grand bursts of motivation, only subtle perfecting through motion. The man who sharpens one edge daily ends up sharper than the man searching for the perfect grindstone, the iron martial tradition. There exists a deeper word, Guoji, the art of practice without gap. It means removing the empty pause between thought and action, dissolving hesitation until intention flows directly into movement. No space for second-guessing, no mental warming up, no tiny debate before motion. The artist lifts the brush and it dances. The swordsman moves and the blade sings. The craftsman shapes what is if guided by something earlier than thinking. Guoji is the cure to modern paralysis. It trains the nervous system to trust movement more than musing. To live without the gap is to erase the distance where fear grows. This is what the modern man must relearn. He scheduled planning sessions, journaling marathons, productivity redesigns, all divorced from the moment his hand actually touches work. But alignment is found only through doing. Replace planning session with alignment session, a short review of direction that concludes with immediate execution. No power lives in the note unless the action follows before the ink dries. Each alignment session should end with one motion, a call made, a word written, a rep performed, because clarity is not mental, it's kinetic. The mind clarifies through feedback, not fantasy. That's the rhythm used by the masters, whether they forged swords or led clans. Observe, adjust, act. Every iteration was an answer to reality, not a monologue of intention. Kaizen's strength lies in humility. It doesn't demand heroic leaps. It demands 1%. 1% better, compounded over time, becomes unrecognizable power. We live in a culture searching for the hack, the surge, the massive change, yet the samurai and Zen craftsman found peace in steady forward motion. 1% better, 0% hesitation. This principle cuts both through laziness and perfectionism. It demands something now, however small, and leaves no room for delay. Improvement ceases to feel like striving. It becomes breathing. Each repetition is both expression and refinement. I end this philosophy. Thinking is integrated, not isolated. The brain and body are partners in mastery. Theory alone corrupts instinct, just as instinct without direction dissipates. The sword doesn't think. It cuts. That phrase, when lived, redefines masculinity itself. The disciplined man doesn't chatter in his mind about how he'll begin. He begins, and in doing so, thought finds its rightful place as silent servant. The weapon does not imagine the strike. It becomes a strike. The same principle applies to your daily craft, your relationships, your purpose. Every hesitation is a dull edge. Every decisive motion, even small, sharpens identity. Guoji and Kaizen converge into one truth. Mastery is less about intensity and more about immediacy. 1,000 tiny motions carve a path deeper than one grand outburst. The great warrior and the great monk understood this as law. Every swing of the sword, every sweep of the broom, every deliberate breath carved the same groove. Act now, correct through action, perfect through response. Life, then, becomes one seamless motion of doing and discerning, like wave returning forever to the shore without fatigue. When you approach your work this way, discipline stops being a performance you perform and becomes a state you inhabit. You stop trying to be disciplined and simply act in alignment. That is real momentum, quiet, unstoppable, invisible to those searching for spectacle. When the man acts without delay, he meets resistance. When steel hits flesh, excuses evaporate. It's in that heat where identity changes. After the man commits to action, the war begins. Not the visible war of schedules, tasks, and goals, but the invisible one within. The first few days of decisive motion spark a strange discomfort. Self-doubt whispers, mistakes multiply, the comfort of control burns away. He had imagined that acting would set him free, but action invites a harsher teacher, reality. And reality, unlike the planner's fantasy, is merciless with excuses. Every decision now has consequences. Every misstep reflects back a sharper image of who he truly is. This confrontation is a crucible. It's where warriors are born. Because once motion begins, the greatest resistance isn't outer. It's a voice inside that resists change, fearing the death of its own comfort. The true opponent is not circumstance but self-image. This is the internal battle ancient masters train for. The daily duel with a critic that says, "You should have done better. You're not ready. You'll embarrass yourself." That voice doesn't vanish through preparation. It weakens through exposure. Acting anyway teaches a nervous system that fear can shout but not command. Execution itself becomes meditation, each move carving silence into the noise of judgment. Zen teaches detachment from outcome not as passivity, but as clarity amid chaos. When the warrior swings his sword, he must do so with pure commitment, yet with no dependence on the strike's success. Only then can his body move without tightness. His heart remains still even as death circles nearby. In life, the same principle applies. Progress requires full presence without obsession over result. True detachment means doing everything you can with clean intention, then releasing the result like an arrow from a bow. The archer controls aim, not wind. Musa should once face an opponent considered unbeatable. Instead of complicating his strategy, he arrived late, calm, moving slowly, unsettling the opponent's rhythm. He won not through superior strength, but through composure. He understood that mastery means governing one's inner weather even under fire. The lesson is not about combat, it's about how response defines outcome. Composure is the invisible art beneath all disciplines. Modern men lose that art to frantic energy, multitasking through fatigue, sprinting through burnout, attaching their worth to every metric. Yet Zen mastery demands the opposite, calm intensity, not manic striving. When the project collapses, the email fails, the workout feels empty, the warrior breathes once more, centers, strikes again. He knows failure is not a verdict but feedback, life's shorthand for recalibration. Failure, to the untrained, feels like identity death. To the disciplined, it's data. Each imperfect swing, each awkward first attempt, widens awareness. Only those who accept falling can rise with precision. This is why the samurai meditated daily on mortality. They called it death consciousness. It wasn't morbidity but liberation. When a man accepts that outcome can die, ego quiets. He moves freer, unafraid of embarrassment, loss, or imperfection. What remains is pure participation, presence unchained from the need to win. In this mind, the worst possible day loses its power, and the smallest victory becomes sacred. Modern resistance looks different but feels the same. It's the endless timeline awake, the treadmill of achievement, the flood of distractions that drown focus. It appears external deadlines, critics, financial pressure, but beneath it all, the conflict is internal. Who am I when things stop going my way? The warrior answers by acting anyway. He doesn't romanticize pain. He refines through it. He sees every irritation as a blade sharpening resolve. He no longer flinches from mistakes because they are the only honest teachers left. Detachment frees him not from caring, but from collapsing the I in the end. The resistance is not an enemy but an initiation. It asks one question: are you willing to keep moving when praise disappears, when progress hides, when failure mocks you? The disciplined answer is yes, not emotionally, but with the next quiet act, over and over, until momentum replaces doubt. When the planner dies, the warrior awakens. The man who once feared imperfection now breathes joyfully in motion. What emerges now is a new identity, one sculpted by present action, not imagined order. There is a moment when the man who once worshipped his planners finally looks up and realizes the pages have gone silent. The lists are gone, the dashboard's dim, and yet life moves. He moved with it. The noise that once filled his mind is quieted into clarity. The chaos he feared to enter has become his rhythm. This is a rebirth at the end of the warrior's path, not the death of discipline, but its purification. Beneath all the systems and strategies, he has discovered what the samurai knew centuries ago, that mastery is not in control, but in surrender to deliberate movement. The still warrior walks into each task without friction, no longer overthinking, no longer performing perfection. He does what needs doing, completely, then releases it into silence. The journey here has stripped away the illusions. The illusion that perfect preparation ensures safety. The illusion that clarity must precede action. The illusion that fear is a signal to pause instead of proceed. Through battle with hesitation, he has found stillness that moves, simplicity that generates power. He understands now that the sharpest weapon is not knowledge, but decisiveness made graceful through humility. He is not frantic, yet he wastes no time. He doesn't need motivation. He has rhythm. His life no longer swings between intensity and stagnation. It flows. This is the essence of the code. Presence turned kinetic. Every warrior carries a creed, and it is written not on parchment but in the pulse of daily motion. Plan briefly. Execute deeply. Honor clarity, not comfort. Be unmoved by uncertainty. Respect timing as sacred. These are not mantras to be recited, but live in how he writes, lifts, speaks, listens, creates. The still warrior plans only enough to aim, then strikes with full sincerity. He is not careless, he is complete. His mind sketches a blueprint, but his hands build the truth. Each act is an offering to reality itself, imperfect, honest, immediate that he no longer avoids the unknown. He bows to it. Presence replaces control. Silence replaces self-doubt. His victories are small but absolute. One decision made without flinch, one conversation held without armor, one motion executed with full awareness. He learns as he moves, calibrating not with guilt but curiosity. Life becomes feedback, not failure. The old self, the overthinker, the planner, the collector of someday has faded. Now stands a man grounded enough to act and calm enough to learn. The warrior's discipline has merged with the monk's serenity. Action and stillness breathe as one that the scene returns to where it began. A desk once crowded with plans now holds only a single sheet of paper. On it rests a sentence, handwritten, direct, his declaration. Not a goal, not a resolution, one immediate execution he will perform within 24 hours. No plan, only presence. This act marks a crossing. It is a demonstration of the code of motion, that thought fulfills itself only through embodiment. The samurai would recognize the gesture, the quiet bow before action, the clean unsheathing of the mind, and so the man's new life begins not in noise, but in deliberate calm. He plans little because he lives deeply. He delays nothing because he trusts timing. He moves because that is who he has become. Motion without doubt, stillness without fear. In this, he finds peace not after the work, but within it. The war is over. The motion remains.